Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you guys are here and still feel so awkward that I'm like starting a YouTube channel. Without further ado, we're gonna get into today, and that is I want to talk about my birth story. This video will probably be like two parts. I'll probably be talking about my birth story and then probably about my son's NICU stay. So stay tuned for part 2. I am very excited to talk about this because honestly, when I was going through this situation of right before birth and then during birth and then NICU, I felt like there wasn't a lot of people on the internet that had the same experience, or if they did, they just like didn't really talk about it. And so I felt kind of lost and didn't feel like I could relate to anyone. So yeah, so it felt kind of lonely, but I'm hoping that with this video, I can be there for someone, be there for a mom or a dad or a family member that is going through a similar situation that I went through. Okay, so in order to tell you guys this story, I gotta go all the way back to the very beginning. So it was July the 3rd. I found out that I was pregnant, and it was so perfect because July 4th, obviously, was the next day. And we were able to tell pretty much all of our family members, all of our immediate family. People always say like, oh, you should wait until your first trimester is done, like 12 weeks to tell people. Y'all, I told people at like, I found out early. I was technically only 3 weeks and like a couple of days. Like I wasn't even 4 weeks yet. I hadn't even like missed my period. I did like the early detection digital test, whatever it's called. So I did that and found out that I was pregnant, and it was the best day ever. I've always wanted to be a mom, probably since I was like 15, which is like kind of crazy to say out loud, but it's fine. When I found out that I was pregnant, I was so excited and just so overwhelmed with joy to be able to start my own family. So I got pregnant and I go through my first trimester. First trimester is just kind of your typical, like, I felt awful. I was so sick. I was actually so miserable, and I was not very nice, and everything grossed me out. I just had the typical like sickness, all day sickness. Don't really know why it's called morning sickness. I felt like throwing up all day, every single day for 12 weeks straight. So after my first trimester, my second trimester, I started to feel really good. And right at the beginning of our second trimester is also when we found out that we were gonna have a baby boy. It was so fun finding out that I was having a boy for the first time. And my mom also had a boy for her first baby, so it was just like really sweet. I love my mom so much. So being able to kind of like bond on like, oh, our first babies were boys. It was so fun. I love my son so much, and he has just been the joy of our lives. And so I adore him. Up until this point, I was having a very regular pregnancy. Like literally everything was perfect. Around Thanksgiving is when things kind of started to shift a little bit. Me and my husband, we do our annual turkey trot. We love it so much. We don't run. We do not run. We walk. Eventually we'll run. I don't know. But we support a good cause, and it's fun waking up at like 6 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. We get our steps in, and then we get to go eat a bunch of food. It's a fun family tradition that we started when we got married. At this point, I was only about 24 weeks. I remember doing the turkey trot that morning, and I felt really miserable. Like, felt like something was off. Something in me was like, something feels off, but I didn't know how to express it because it also was like my first time ever being pregnant. So Thanksgiving happens. That day just ended up being like a normal day. I was still really tired. I was starting to get a little like swollen, but nothing extremely crazy. After Thanksgiving weekend, the first week of December rolls around, and this is like when things really got bad. I called my mom and I was like, look, I like actually can't make it to this event. I am so exhausted. And y'all, literally that entire day, I did nothing. I went to Target for like probably 15 minutes, and I had to leave because I was going to fall asleep while like shopping. Like while I was walking around, it felt like I was gonna drop dead almost. I was like, I can't go to the event tonight. I'm just gonna go home and I'm gonna go to bed. And she's like, okay, great, no worries. You know, listen to your body, you need to rest. Saturday, we went to my husband's aunt's house and we just had like a regular hangout with them. We ordered pizza, we ordered wings, and this is how I knew that something was wrong. I remember I ate one pizza and I ate one wing, and I literally felt so sick and so full. And I remember telling my husband, like, I just like really feel so sick. And he's like, that's strange. Like, you know, again, nobody was taking me seriously. I told him that I wasn't feeling good, and he kind of was like, okay, like, you know, let's go home and you'll just rest and you'll feel good the next morning. Pretty sure we went to church that morning and I felt fine. Everything went away. I felt good. I was able to eat and everything was great. Monday is when things really go downhill from here. I wake up with a pain in my chest, so excruciating. I called my boss and I was like, hey, can I please work from home today? I like physically feel, my chest hurts so bad. It feels like I can't breathe. So I work from home that day. I ended up going to the doctor. I think I went to the urgent care and they told me that they couldn't see me because I was pregnant or something like that. Anyways, they ended up sending me home. They didn't see me. That night, I still felt really bad, and I told my husband, hey, I think we should just go to the like emergency room and just make sure that everything's okay. Obviously, this is like our first baby. We don't want anything to happen to our baby, and so let's just go. I'd rather be safe than sorry. At this point, I was like feeling so bad. I had like, it felt like heartburn, but magnified. It was so awful. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything. Even breathing like would hurt so bad. We go to the ER, and long story short, they send me home. So Wednesday morning, I like have all my blood pressure readings, and I tell my OB, I'm like, hey, I send her a message through the portal. I'm like, hey, these are my blood pressure readings. What would you like me to do? What are next steps? I get a call and they're like, hi, Amanda, you need to go to the hospital immediately. And I was like, oh, okay. My mom picks me up. I pack a bag for like 1 or 2 days because I'm like, okay, I feel like they're probably gonna want me to stay at the hospital for a day or two. That's fine. I packed my things and we went to the hospital. Got to the hospital. And I had an angel of a nurse. I don't even remember her name, but she was so sweet. They check my blood pressure, they do all the labs, and they give me a steroid shot. And they say, hey, your baby, let me not cry while I'm telling this story. They say your baby might be coming early. At this point, I was right at 20. I had just got to 26 weeks. So to hear that your baby is coming and you're 26 weeks is like the most terrifying thing possible. It was probably the scariest thing I've ever had to go through. So she gives me the steroid shot and they say, hey, we're gonna transfer you to a different hospital downtown because our hospital does not have a NICU and we want you to be with your baby if you give birth. I get to the hospital. I'm there for a couple of days. They tell me, hey, you're gonna live here until you give birth. So that could be tomorrow, that could be 8 weeks from now. They could not tell me when I was going to give birth. And I think that was probably even like such a even scarier thing because it was like I could literally be living in the hospital for the next 3 months. But that was just what it was. All of my family visited me. My mom was an angel of a mother. I adore her. Literally could not do life without her. She came and she decorated my room, Christmas themed because it was December at the time. And we decorated everything, and on my board, my only goal was to remain pregnant. And well, that did not last very long. On Sunday, I woke up again with that excruciating pain, and this time it was the worst pain I've ever had in my life. Doctors basically diagnosed me with severe preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. Not a lot of people know about this, but HELLP syndrome is basically a complication from preeclampsia, and 1 in 4 women die from HELLP syndrome, and it is very dangerous. It is very scary. And they do some labs on me, and later that evening my doctor comes in and he says, hey, your liver is failing and you need to have an emergency C-section right now. I go, okay, great. I love that for me. Let's go. They put me on magnesium to prevent seizures, because that's just kind of like, I don't know if they do that for all severe preeclampsia patients or if it's just like for specific ones depending on like your lab levels, but I was on a magnesium drip. I know a lot of women have expressed that they've had a really bad experience on magnesium. Mine wasn't awful. I just felt very hot for a moment. It was like almost like if you get a fever very quickly, but your body feels very warm, but it's not anything uncomfortable, or at least that wasn't my experience. After being on this magnesium, I went into my emergency C-section and delivered my baby at 26 weeks, and he was so perfect and beautiful. So I got to see him for a split second, and then they took him away to the NICU, and I was not able to see my son until the next day. And I actually wasn't able to hold my son until I think day 5 of him being born. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, because going into pregnancy, I had told my husband that I wanted to have an all-natural birth. I had all these things that I wanted to do and had all these expectations of what my birth was going to look like. And so when I had an expectation of I want to have a natural birth and catch my own baby, and I go from that to emergency C-section, and now I can't even touch my baby for 5 days, I have no words. I have no words, and it's an experience that will forever be with me. I learned so much about myself and about Jesus, and he really held my hand through the entire process. But it was, even though God is still good, that moment in my life was still really hard. And when I talk about it, it makes me emotional, because I just look back at his goodness and his faithfulness, and I look at my son now, who is so healthy. And I remember in that moment, I felt very scared of what was my life gonna look like? What was my son gonna be okay? Is he gonna even survive? In that moment, it was so important for me and my husband to cling on to the Word of God and to cling on to Jesus and know that he's our sustainer and he is our healer and he is our provider. And I know that he was with Julian the whole time that he was in the NICU. After that whole process of me giving birth and my son entering the NICU, I stayed at the hospital for about a week later, since they wanted to make sure that my levels were good. And also there is something called postpartum preeclampsia, I think. So having HELLP syndrome made me extremely high risk. And so now going forward with my next pregnancies, I will have to be monitored a lot more closely. After I was cleared, I was able to go home and not be with my baby. I had to leave without my baby, and that was probably the worst day of my entire life. It was so sad. The car ride was almost deafening. It was a silence that was the most painful silence in my life. Me and my husband, I don't even think said a word to each other the whole car ride home. And I think I sobbed the entire way home. I really don't even remember. And all I remember is I got home and I called my mom because I was so sad. And I get home, and I hadn't been home at this point for about 2 weeks. I see all the baby things that I had that I was getting ready for him, and he wasn't here. And it was so sad. So after getting home, that kind of started another chapter, because I was dealing with healing from my C-section, and then also having to go to the hospital every single day. So I definitely want to do a part 2 on my son's NICU journey, because I do think there are so many other things that I want to like chat about. This journey is just a lot, but God is still good, and it's been a year pretty much since everything has happened, and it's crazy how much can change in a year. With that being said, if you are a mom that is going through this right now, if you have a baby that's in the NICU, I just want to say that you are seen and you are known, and Jesus is with you every step of the way, even in the hard moments where you feel like he's not there. He's there holding you, and he is near to the brokenhearted. And I truly believe that with all of my soul, because I've never felt closer to Jesus than that time in my life. It was like he was all I had, and I really don't know how I would have done it without him. If you're going through a similar situation, just know that he loves you, and that I love you, and that I'm always here if anyone wants to reach out or ask questions or talk or whatever. I'm not a medical professional, but I can give you my experience and how I got through things. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in and hearing my birth story. Stay tuned for part 2. And yeah, we will chat later. Okay, bye besties.